Early settlement and foundation, 3rd century BCE. The origins of Paris can be traced back to a Celtic settlement established by the Parisii tribe on the Isle de la site in the 3rd century BCE. At that time, the area was a marshy landscape inhabited by various Celtic tribes. The Parisii chose the Isle de la site for its strategic location on the Seine River, which provided access to trade routes and fertile land for agriculture. The settlement, known as Lutetia Parisiorum, gradually grew into a thriving trading center and an important hub for commerce and culture in the region. Roman conquest, 52 BCE. In 52 BCE, Julius Caesar's Roman legions conquered the territory inhabited by the Parisii and established a Roman town called Lutetia on the site of present-day Paris. The Romans introduced Roman architecture, urban planning, and governance to Lutetia, transforming it into a prosperous Roman city. The Roman period saw the construction of temples, baths, amphitheaters, and other public buildings, laying the foundation for Paris's future development as a major European city. Early Christianization, 3rd century CE. During the 3rd century CE, Christianity began to spread in Paris, leading to the construction of early Christian churches and the establishment of Christian communities in the city. The rise of Christianity marked a significant cultural and religious shift in Paris, as pagan temples were gradually replaced by Christian churches and religious practices. The Christianization of Paris laid the groundwork for the city's future role as a center of Christian faith and culture in Europe. Viking raids, 9th century. In the 9th century, Paris faced numerous Viking raids as Viking fleets sailed up the Seine River to plunder and pillage the city. One of the most infamous Viking raids occurred in 845 when a Viking fleet besieged Paris, prompting the city's inhabitants to offer a ransom to spare the city from destruction. The Viking raids exposed Paris to external threats and highlighted the need for fortifications and defenses to protect the city from future attacks. Hugh Capet and the Capetian dynasty, 10th century. In 987, Hugh Capet was crowned king of the Franks, marking the beginning of the Capetian dynasty. Paris became the capital of the Kingdom of France under the Capetian kings, solidifying its status as the political and cultural center of the realm. The Capetian dynasty would rule France for nearly 9 centuries, shaping the country's institutions, laws, and identity, and leaving a lasting impact on the development of Paris as a royal capital. Notre-Dame Cathedral construction begins, 12th century. Construction on Notre-Dame Cathedral commenced in 1163 during the reign of King Louis VII and continued for over a century. The cathedral, with its iconic Gothic architecture and towering spires, became a symbol of Paris and a masterpiece of medieval craftsmanship. Notre-Dame Cathedral played a central role in the religious and cultural life of the city, hosting coronations, royal weddings, and other important ceremonies throughout its history. 100 Years' War, 14th to 15th centuries. Paris endured the turmoil of the 100 Years' War between France and England, experiencing sieges, occupations, and battles. The war, which lasted from the late 14th to the mid-15th century, brought devastation and suffering to Paris and its inhabitants. Despite these challenges, Paris remained a symbol of French resilience and nationalism, rallying behind the French kings and nobles in their struggle against the English invaders. Renaissance and cultural flourishing, 16th century. During the Renaissance, Paris experienced a cultural renaissance of its own, with flourishing arts, literature, and architecture. The city became a hub for intellectuals, artists, and thinkers from across Europe, attracting scholars, poets, and philosophers to its universities, salons, and academies. The Renaissance period saw the emergence of iconic landmarks such as the Louvre Palace, which was transformed into a royal residence and a showcase for art and culture. Louis XIV and the Palace of Versailles, 17th century. The reign of King Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, saw the expansion of royal power and the construction of the magnificent Palace of Versailles. Louis XIV moved the royal court from Paris to Versailles, transforming the former hunting lodge into a grand palace that symbolized the glory and grandeur of the French monarchy. Versailles became the center of political power, courtly etiquette, and extravagant festivities, setting new standards of luxury and opulence for European royalty. French Revolution, 18th century. The French Revolution of 1789 brought about profound social and political changes in Paris and France as a whole. The revolution was sparked by widespread discontent with the monarchy, economic inequality, and social injustice. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, marked the beginning of the revolution, leading to the overthrow of the monarchy, the execution of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, and the establishment of the First French Republic. The French Revolution ushered in an era of radical transformation, as revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity swept across France and inspired movements for social and political change around the world. Napoleonic era, 19th century. Under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte, Paris experienced a period of significant transformation and expansion. Napoleon's reign saw the consolidation of power, the expansion of the French Empire, and the promotion of nationalism and modernization. Napoleon initiated ambitious infrastructure projects, such as the construction of the Arc de Triomphe and the Vendôme Column, which celebrated his military victories and glorified the achievements of the French nation. Haussmann's renovation, 19th century. In the mid-19th century, Emperor Napoleon III commissioned Georges-Eugène Haussmann to undertake a massive urban renewal project in Paris. Haussmann's renovations, known as the Haussmannization of Paris, aimed to modernize the city's infrastructure, improve public health and sanitation, and beautify the urban landscape. Haussmann's plan involved the demolition of crowded and unsanitary medieval neighborhoods, the construction of wide boulevards, parks, and public squares, and the creation of a modern sewer system and water supply network. The Haussmannization of Paris transformed the city into a modern metropolis and laid the foundation for its future growth and development as a global capital. Belle Époque, late 19th, early 20th centuries. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a golden age for Paris, known as the Belle Époque, or Beautiful Era. During this time, Paris flourished culturally, economically, and socially, becoming a center of innovation, art, and entertainment. The Belle Époque was characterized by economic prosperity, technological advancements, and artistic creativity, as Paris became a magnet for writers, artists, musicians, and intellectuals from around the world. The city's cafés, cabarets, and theaters buzzed with activity, while its streets were lined with elegant boulevards, luxury boutiques, and grand hotels. The Belle Époque era left an indelible mark on Parisian culture and society, shaping its identity as a city of romance, luxury, and sophistication. World War I, 20th century. During World War I, Paris served as a vital hub for the French war effort. Although the city was not directly on the front lines, it experienced the impact of the war through bombings, food shortages, and the influx of refugees. Paris became a symbol of national unity and resilience, as its residents endured hardships and sacrifices in support of the war effort. The war also brought social and cultural changes to Paris, as women took on new roles in the workforce, and the city became a haven for artists, writers, and intellectuals fleeing the conflict in other parts of Europe. Interwar period and the Roaring Twenties, 20th century. The interwar period between World War I and World War II saw Paris continue to thrive as a cultural capital, despite the aftermath of the Great War. The 1920s, in particular, were characterized by a period of cultural experimentation, artistic innovation, and social change known as the Roaring Twenties. Paris became a center of avant-garde art, literature, and fashion, as artists such as Pablo Picasso, Ernest Hemingway, and Coco Chanel flocked to the city to participate in its vibrant cultural scene. The Roaring Twenties brought a sense of liberation and hedonism to Paris, as jazz clubs, speakeasies, and cabarets flourished, and new social norms challenged traditional values and conventions. German occupation in World War II, 20th century. During World War II, Paris fell under German occupation from 1940 to 1944. The city endured hardships, including food shortages, curfews, and deportations, as the Nazis imposed their rule on Paris and its inhabitants. Despite the oppressive conditions, Parisians resisted the German occupation through acts of sabotage, espionage, and defiance, demonstrating their courage and resilience in the face of adversity. The occupation also divided the city's population, as some collaborated with the Nazi regime, while others joined the resistance movement to fight against it. Liberation of Paris, 1944. On August 25, 1944, Paris was liberated from German occupation by the French forces of the interior and the Allied forces, marking a turning point in the war and a moment of jubilation for the city's residents. The liberation of Paris was celebrated with parades, concerts, and fireworks, as Parisians took to the streets to welcome the return of freedom and democracy. The liberation of Paris symbolized the triumph of good over evil, as the forces of tyranny and oppression were finally defeated, and the city was liberated from Nazi rule. Post-war reconstruction, 20th century. After World War II, Paris underwent a period of reconstruction and renewal as the city sought to rebuild and recover from the devastation of the war. Efforts were made to restore damaged landmarks, rebuild destroyed neighborhoods, and modernize the city's infrastructure while preserving its historic character. The post-war period also saw the emergence of new architectural styles and urban planning concepts, as Paris embraced modernism and embraced the principles of functionalism, efficiency, and progress. The reconstruction of Paris symbolized the city's resilience and determination to rise from the ashes of war and rebuild a better future for its residents. May 1968 protests, 20th century. In May 1968, Paris was rocked by student protests and general strikes that paralyzed the city and brought France to the brink of revolution. The events of May 1968 were fueled by widespread discontent with the political establishment, economic inequality, and social injustice, as students, workers, and intellectuals took to the streets to demand radical change. The protests were met with violent repression by the authorities, leading to clashes and confrontations that shocked the nation and sparked a national debate about authority, democracy, and individual freedoms. Although the protests ultimately failed to bring about a revolution, they had far-reaching social, political, and cultural implications, as they challenged the status quo and inspired a new generation of activists and reformers. Modern Paris, 21st century. In the 21st century, Paris continues to be a global city renowned for its art, culture, cuisine, and fashion. The city has embraced innovation and technology, becoming a hub for startups, entrepreneurs, and creative industries. Paris remains a center of international diplomacy and cooperation, hosting major events such as the United Nations Climate Change Conference and the Olympic Games. Despite facing challenges such as urbanization, pollution, and social inequality, Paris remains a beacon of hope and inspiration, attracting millions of visitors from around the world each year who come to experience its beauty, history, and vitality.